Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show.
Next one, we have a question about Himalayan salt. Somebody's asked me, they said, unlike regular salt, they heard it's alkalizing to the system. Do you think that's accurate? Well, I really haven't researched that too much. I know there's a lot of minerals, and they're alkalizing minerals in salt, and table salt is definitely not something I would recommend, but the pink Himalayan sea salt and also the Celtic sea salt, I think are great and have alkalizing minerals if they're used in a limited amount. I think it's a common issue today that people are overdoing salt, and no matter what type of salt you're overdoing, if you're overdoing it, it's overdoing it. But I think if you're going to do salt, and I think even maybe in general, I like if somebody has distilled water, maybe putting a little bit of salt, a pinch of salt in there might help to put some of the minerals back in. So I think that's okay and it's fine. The next question I have is about lung disease. Somebody says they have bronchitis and they want to do, the hospital wants to actually do a lung transplant, and they're asking me if I think it's worth it. Well, I don't know the stage you're in. I mean, from what you told me, it sounds quite serious, but I would use as a last resort surgery or removal of an organ. I won't say I'll never use that as a resort, but I would use that as a last resort. And anytime you have a disease that ends in a letter ITIS, it's inflammation of the body, and inflammation is usually caused by diet and lifestyle. So I would definitely look at diet and lifestyle before going to some drastic measures of getting a lung transplant. You know, however, I don't know your situation. If you've done all that and you've tried everything you possibly could try and you just don't know what else to do and it's a life or death situation, well then yeah, that might be the way I would recommend you go. But I usually find that that's not necessary, and people jump to conclusions because of fear of the doctors telling them something that's not necessarily true. So I would be very cautious and would advise against that unless it's absolutely the last thing you got. And even in that case, sometimes doing nothing is even better than going through that issue, because I'm not saying sometimes it might help. You know, I know people that have, you know, for example, chemotherapy, and it's not always a good thing, but I know people that if they didn't do anything, sometimes they might have gotten better, but sometimes they might have gotten worse, and it prolonged their life. It might not have prolonged it in a good, high-quality way, but if somebody's goal was to prolong their life, even if it was in a low-quality way, it certainly does that. So, you know, again, yes and no is my answer. I can't say if I'd recommend it because I don't know your exact situation. The next question is about another popular topic, which I touched on last week, and that is vaccination. Somebody's asking me, what do I think of them? Do I think it's wrong? Well, I absolutely think they're wrong, and I don't think there's ever a reason for babies to be vaccinated. I highly recommend against it. I think it's actually almost criminal that our doctors would drug up our children at all, at any age, but, you know, just pump up all these drugs. It's worse than ever before. I think the reason why disease is highest rates than ever before in the history of man is because we've given our babies more drugs called vaccinations and immunizations at birth than ever before in the history of man. I definitely do not recommend it, and there's a lot of information out about this, and I think people that think it's a good thing or think it's needed, you know, I'm saying this not to get you upset, but I think you're strongly deceived. And if you've experienced it or have given it to your child already, don't be upset. Just move on and you know, try to detox them from it. I myself was vaccinated, and so were all my friends, because it wasn't as popular when I was younger or when I was a baby. It wasn't as popular not to be not be vaccinated. So my mom shot me up with all these drugs from my doctor, and you know, so I definitely don't recommend it. So that's my answer for that one. And somebody asked me a question about breastfeeding, because I've been talking about the benefits of that, and somebody said I forgot to mention that just about everyone has some level of heavy metal poisoning in their system, and it might affect the baby if we breastfeed. Do you agree? Well, I agree if a person is really, really toxic with heavy metal poisoning, and if that's the case, they will know. If it's that serious, they will know. If somebody has a slight toxicity of metal poisoning, I think it's still much better for them to breastfeed than give their baby baby formula. Or, you know, mother's goat milk is always a good alternative to breast milk. But That's that question. The next one is somebody said concerning the prox of nida. That's when a woman is unclean if she's on her cycle, which we've been talking about. Somebody asked me if Andrea, my wife, made the same vow. I guess they're asking not to touch men. And my answer is, I spoke about this in a previous video, she's seeing this situation and the topic more clearly, and she understands it, but she hasn't went as far as I have yet in making a vow to saying she'll never touch another man or another woman during a certain period of her life. But she's certainly heading in that direction, I believe. And and I think anyone that looks at the topic and prays about it might find what I'm saying is not that crazy or extreme. The next question is, if a person is on a fixed income and severely overweight, what advice do you give them regarding raw food dieting and juice fasting? Well, I think if a person is on a fixed income and they want to lose weight, this is a good situation, because if they don't have enough money to buy enough food, then they'll lose weight. I find it kind of ironic that somebody has a limited amount of funds, but they're still overweight, so they're getting some food that's either too much or too fattening or something, or they're not exercising enough. I think the issue, it doesn't have to be a lot of money to be healthy. It shouldn't have to cost a lot. And if you're unhealthy, it usually costs more money to be unhealthy than it costs to be healthy. Most of the diseases around this world have started and continue because of the rich people of the world that have money to overindulge in food, to buy all these unhealthy foods and so on. It's the people around the world that don't have a lot of money that choose to consume produce and fruits and vegetables as the majority of their diet. Even if it's not organic, they're still much well off. Now, of course, there are people that don't have a lot of money that think they don't have a choice and they go spend their money on McDonald's because they might be able to get a cheap meal or something. That's not what I'm talking about. If you go to the Caribbean or some other country around the world where they don't have a lot of money, you have people out there that are living long lives and they eat very frugally and very simple, just basically produce and so on. So, as for juicing, get yourself a juicer. You could find one on eBay, very inexpensive, and juice. It's not expensive at all. And what's left over from the juice, you could even make sprouted crackers and things like that from that. So the next question is, let's see here, moving along. So the next question is about sea vegetables, and nori in particular. Somebody's asking me how to prepare it or consume it. Basically, you could chop it up into a salad. You can make little vegetable rolls and roll that. Roll that. That's what sushi's rolled in anyway, so you can make like a vegetable sushi. Or you could just eat it plain. You could wrap vegetables and make a wrap. My baby loves to just eat it plain. It's just wonderful, and we have it at rawlife.com at our health store. And so that was that question. That's a simple one. Another lady's asking about a combination of mixed fibers. What a various amount of different questions we have on different topics this week, but different fibers, what do I mean about not mixing them? And she asked me specifically about wool and linen. Well, I believe we should be wearing fibers as natural as possible. And I see people out there wearing a lot of synthetic fibers today, and that is not healthy. But mixing the fibers, all fibers give off a frequency or an energy or a protection. And more natural the fiber, the more higher it is, and the better protection it is from the EMFs and the microwaves and everything else out there. But when we mix these fibers, the protection goes down. So it's important to wear whole fibers like 100% linen or 100% cotton or 100% hemp, and not mix them if we can help that. So that's what I mean about that. Moving on here, we got a couple more questions. Somebody said they're a little confused because in their research, vitamin D is not truly raw, and I'm selling it. Why am I selling it? And do I think I'm just selling it because it's something, a good brand or something? Well, vitamin D is very important, and a lot of people lack it today because they just don't get enough sunlight. I think it's important to supplement if you're not getting it, and the majority of vitamin D on the market is not raw. And now my friend Jordan Rubin has something called a vitamin code, and all his supplements are raw, and he has a vitamin D that is raw. You can check that out on my website, rawlife.com. But regardless if it's raw or not, it's not the issue, because you don't have to be 100% raw. If you need it, get it. The best place to get vitamin D is from the sun, if you can. And there might be some foods that have it in it, or a very limited amount, but it might be in some foods. But the bottom line is, you know, when you take a blood test, if you don't have enough vitamin D, well, you need vitamin D. And if you can't figure out how to get it from the diet and you're not getting it from the sun, well, then get it from supplementation. You don't want to go deficient for your beliefs. All right, everybody, so that's this week's Q&A. If you have any comments or questions, post them below the videos.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the Raw Life Health Show. Raw Life, bright.